right, welcome in to Beyond the Arc. Bill Ryder, Brad Botkin, thank you for listening. Hit the like button, leave a comment on something we say, subscribe on the YouTube channel, turn on notifications so you can know when we're doing special additional programming and content, which we're doing a lot of. We were going to do just a roundup of last night's games and all the exciting things that happened. We have a game 7 between Clippers and Nuggets, and the Knicks won a hard-fought series, close it out in Detroit. But we have breaking news. It's a breaking news pod all of a sudden. Gregg Popovich will no longer be the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. Had health issues stemming from a stroke. Has not coached for a while, but officially now that will not be his role. He will, however, be the president of basketball operations, and it sounds like have a very serious role in that side of things. This was always the organization that he ran, but he ran it from a coach's perspective. And Brad, you and I just talked on TV a little bit about this. I think expected news, and as much as, we sort of knew this was trending this way, good news, Gregg Popovich still gets to be a part of the organization he really created in his image, in his sort of way 2 decades ago.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this at all. I would have been way more surprised if I'd gotten the breaking news report that Gregg Popovich would be back on the sideline next year. The Spurs functioned well in his absence. And as we just talked about on air, I think that's there's a number of bullet points of his legacy, but I think the biggest legacy is the ones that they lay such a strong foundation and put the pieces in such proper positions that they can function in their absence. And I think that's the goal of every coach, every parent, is to do a good enough job in establishing culture, environment, these pillars of beliefs that define what you've run for the past however long he was the coach of the Spurs, that really, and I say this with all respect to Coach Popovich, it didn't feel like a huge seismic event when he was no longer on the sideline for the Spurs. It really didn't. It still felt like you were playing the Spurs. They still felt like the Spurs. They still operate in his identity. And I think that's the biggest tribute, is that his absence doesn't feel like a seismic event on the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable the success that he's had. And you and I just had a conversation about this. One of the things that I always found really, really impressive about Gregg Popovich and about his impact on that team was the way in which he was able to create a culture of, for lack of a better term, selflessness. He got stars to buy into fewer minutes or not as much shine. And this, it also helps to draft the right people. Tim Duncan took less than he certainly could have, less than market value, to extend his career in the window of that Spurs organization. And up until the point where Kawhi Leonard left, and obviously that occurred, for the most part, all the guys that defined the Spurs over the last, I guess it's 25 years, did so in ways that were best for the team. And you put this, I thought, beautifully on CBS Sports HQ, Brad, that Gregg Popovich created this machinery that just kept on running and churned out winning. And part of that is Pop was able to convince guys to play whatever role they had to play, cog or otherwise, in that machine in a way that isn't true for Pat Riley. Like, Pat Riley's Heat way is successful, but he alienates every star that goes through there. Shaquille O'Neal, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Jimmy Butler, all left under bad terms. Outside of Kawhi Leonard, that didn't happen in San Antonio with the guys that mattered. And this isn't a shot at Kobe, but even the Lakers way, right? Kobe versus Tim Duncan was such a fascinating legacy matchup over 25 years. But in a lot of ways, it was also the Gregg Popovich show against the Lakers. And at the end, Kobe made a bunch of money, right? Was overpaid, I think, for his current value his last 2 years in the league, paid perfectly reasonably for his value sort of legacy-wise to the Lakers. But the Lakers last 2 years, they weren't competitive. They didn't win a lot of games. The youth movement kind of wasn't effective and wasn't the focus. And as Tim Duncan got older, that guy would play 29 minutes and 25 minutes and took a back seat to Tony Parker and took a back seat to Kawhi Leonard. And Gregg Popovich's, to your point, ability to set up a long-term plan and an approach where the superstar of that team could get another ring and be effective, by the way, in that playoff run, because he accepted, because of what Gregg Popovich created, that he wasn't the guy anymore. I think that culture you're referencing is a huge part of his legacy, and I think it'll continue even with Pop not on the bench.
Yeah, no question. And you have to acknowledge, the luck of marrying a great coach like this that not only on the sidelines but all these things that we're referencing in terms of organizational building and cohesiveness and moving forward together. It's luck that they tanked out and David Robinson got hurt, and they tanked out and they end up with Tim Duncan. It's luck that they identified Tony Parker, who was the perfect point guard in their system, who was, I think, a late first-round pick. It wasn't somebody that was highly coveted. You know, everybody talks about how smart the San Antonio Spurs are in the draft when they took Manu Ginobili pretty close to the very last pick of the draft in the second round. Well, if they were that smart, they would have used their first-round pick on him. So there's a lot of principles that have taken place with the San Antonio Spurs where you can't actually think you can replicate it. And what they had was the perfect coach with the perfect star player. And Gregg Popovich talked about this multiple times where he was able to coach Tim Duncan hard. So it wasn't just that, like you said, that he's accepting fewer minutes, that he's accepting that he's not. All along, even when he had the most minutes, even when he was the best player, he still was coached hard. He still walked that very fine line between confidence and arrogance, and he was way more on the confidence side. So the guys that have that humility, it's very, very rare for your best player to also be your most accountable player, to be your best teammate. It's something that I've watched happen with the Warriors, and Steve Kerr has even referenced this. When you get a guy like Stephen Curry in your building, there's just such a firm standing that you're on that everybody is going to follow that leadership example. And it makes the job of a guy like Gregg Popovich so much easier to be able to, you know, get in the shorts of Tim Duncan when he's not doing things right, to make an example of him and not lose that connection with his star player. So the marriage that they had was how this thing was able to flourish. And now they get Victor Wembanyama, who seems to be all about the same things. And so it's just that it seems like this sort of the basketball gods sort of reward doing things the right way, and you end up with the right people. And now it seems like this machine is going to keep on running.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would give Gregg Popovich, I think, ample credit, much more credit for the player, the person you're describing in Tim Duncan than Steve Kerr gets for Steph. I mean, I was going to say Kerr's amazing. Producer Aaron doesn't agree, but whatever. Kerr came into that organization after Steph had some time in the league and had some success. Whatever player Steph was going to be as a leader or not, Steph was. Pop got Duncan as obviously as a rookie. And to your point about luck, also had David Robinson as sort of a counterweight and a cultural force and just a person who could teach that, you know, a young Duncan how to be a pro in the league. But Popovich raised Duncan up, right, from rookie to superstar. And so the fingerprints of Gregg Popovich are on that team from the very beginning. And you're right, the luck is a huge part of it. And there's an orneriness we were discussing. There's an edginess that I have experienced, and it wasn't funny at the time, but it's funny now. I mean, Pop, incredibly bright guy, thoughtful about things beyond basketball. Not that this isn't true of other coaches, but it's not true of every coach. Like, you're not going to go hang out with Tom Thibodeau and talk about world history and socioeconomics and, you know, deep. I mean, Pop is a fascinating guy beyond hoops, and I think that's part of the reason he connected with his players and with his guys. And it's what's going to be interesting, Brad, is now it's his decision. And you talked about this in a really interesting way on HQ. He'll decide who the head coach is, and he'll decide what to do with a lot of choices. Okay, so Shams reporting Mitch Johnson is officially getting the job. So now it's up to Pop to decide. And how did you put it? I loved it. Do you use the fast forward button or not? Because they have picks, they have assets, they have not just Wembanyama, hopefully when he's back next year. They have De'Aaron Fox, they have Stephon Castle, who was great. They have a lot of picks. They are a landing spot for any big name. Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, if he makes himself available as at least a pot, they'll be in the mix. I'll be interested, Brad, to see what Popovich's vision is for how quickly to push this thing or let it bake.
I know, because it is a difficult decision because of how competitive the Western Conference is. If you know, as you put it, push the fast forward button and say, I want to compete next year, you just might, even if you were able to go out and get like a Kevin Durant, honestly, as crazy as that sounds, with De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Durant and Victor Wembanyama and Stephon Castle, you might still be like the fourth seed. And, you know, so like with how good the Western Conference is, you almost have to be like, we either kind of shoot to the top where I think Giannis would be like a no-brainer. Like, okay, this is our
Would
time.
you unspool Castle? Would you move because you'd have to move Castle
Yes, I would
as
for
part of that
Giannis.
deal.
For Giannis, because there's just, people talk about your glory days, right? Like in high school, and like the high school athlete, and it's talked about in the sense that shouldn't be the best time of your life, but like the reality is sometimes the best years are the early years, and you can't replicate them. And so I don't know. I think sometimes we diminish the early years too much, as if the future is guaranteed. Like ask Dan Marino if he ever had a better chance to win a Super Bowl than his first year. And this doesn't always happen. And so if you have a chance to win right now, like sometimes you have to jump on that, because this idea of this rainbow, and in the next 7 years, 10 years, 12, we're just going to consistently have this great team. It just doesn't always work out that way, particularly with the CBA. De'Aaron Fox is going to come up for money. He's ready to win right now. They might not be able to afford him in the second apron era. So like, if you have a chance, right, it's really a fascinating question. What would constitute putting the pedal down right now at, surface layer, without really examining the league, who might be available, who might not? I think if Giannis becomes available, you do it. Like, you're ready, because Giannis isn't like a one and done. He's still got time left on his tires. I think that's a no-brainer, and they can definitely be in the mix for something like that. I mean, they can, assuming Oklahoma City doesn't go out and get in the mix for him, they can pretty much put the best offer out there. I mean, he's not going to Utah. These teams that have all these assets and young players,
that such derision.
They can do that. They can do that. So it's really, really fascinating how they're going to play this out.
It really is. All right, we'll continue this conversation a little bit about Popovich and his impact and the news. He's not going to be the coach. He is president of basketball operations and will be very, very involved. And then we'll quickly round up last night's games and look forward to tonight. All of that coming up next here on Beyond the Arc.
We dig it. Do you? The Pro Volleyball Federation on CBS Sports Network.
Okay, welcome back into the podcast. It's Beyond the Arc. He's Brad Botkin. I'm Bill Ryder. One other sort of last thought from me on this, Brad, is we expected, as you noted, that Gregg Popovich wasn't going to coach again. His health obviously took a turn for the problematic. We hope he's okay, but it sounded like, and now it is certain, that the rigors of the travel and the realities of being a head coach just weren't going to be something that he could do. And as I talked to people around the league and just generally thought about it, my main concern was when Popovich left, how much of his aura would remain. The culture would remain, but Popovich can connect with people. He's a charmer. And I think another sort of good point of the news that he's going to be a part of the team. And you were talking about Giannis. There's no guarantee that if Giannis becomes available, and if Giannis allows himself, and I hope he does, and people in Milwaukee think this is the case, that if Giannis decides to go, the thought is he's not going to demand one location like Lillard tried to do, ironically. He might say, here are 5 or 6 or 7 places, and go get a return and we'll talk about it, right? To make sure the price is high enough that Milwaukee ends up okay. In that case, it becomes in part a recruitment battle too, right? And having Gregg Popovich, even as the president of operations, to be able to call Giannis or sit down with him or whatever, for Kevin Durant, I think that has an impact. I think it's different than Popovich retires and, some new impressive random guy's in charge. That Popovich can still have a huge impact if he decides to push that fast forward button you referenced, just by the fact he's Gregg Popovich and he's still there.
No doubt. I mean, Pat Riley wasn't the coach when the recruitment started of Chris Bosh. I mean, it's the sort of godfather aspect of your organization when you're trying to get the best players in the game. Absolutely. I mean, no question about it. You also, on your side, have the fact that Giannis has made it very clear that he doesn't care about market. I mean, he would stay in Milwaukee the rest of his career if they were ready to win. So San Antonio's not playing with 2 strikes against it from that standpoint. I mean, it's fascinating that, you really, it's not just because of this news on Popovich. Even if independent of this, if you were to throw out like, okay, the teams that can put the best offer together for Giannis Antetokounmpo or any star, without, and here's the most important part, without stripping itself, because we have seen now how the Bucks, and you saw this firsthand with Milwaukee, how they stripped themselves to get Damian Lillard. It has to be a team, and Houston is one of these teams. and whatever the sweepstakes end up being, Kevin Durant, Zion, whatever, any team that can go out and get, a Trae Young that might become available. These teams that don't have to strip themselves down to do it, that is no longer a viable path to contending. And the Spurs don't have to strip it down. They've got all kinds of draft assets they can play. They can put young players in without having to give up Wembanyama, without having to give up Castle, without having to give up Fox. They've got Vassell, they've got Johnson, they've got Sohan, they've got all kinds of draft picks, they've got salary filler, Harrison Barnes, and they can do this while keeping the core of what is already a good team.
I wouldn't trade Giannis if I were John Horst. I'd get Stephon Castle back. It would just be a requirement. It would be a requirement.
Well, he'll try.
You have a choice.
And I would do it.
You have a choice.
I would do it. But yeah.
I'm with you. I would try not to and we just saw from the Mavericks, from Nico, you never know what a GM will cave on. All right, so we're under a bit of a time crunch here. So I want to hit the 2 games last night and the game tonight, and then I want to talk about JJ Redick very briefly before we close it out. I'm going to give you my 2 cents on the Knicks, and you just sort of tell me if I'm right or wrong. The glass half full is Knicks advance. Good job. You go to the second round. Jalen Brunson is amazing. He's that guy, and he's especially that clutch player of the year. Is even more clutch in the playoffs. That fourth quarter, that 3-point shot that put Asar Thompson on his feet. I mean, he's amazing. The Knicks still look ragged and worn out to me. Karl-Anthony Towns vanished for a second time in the second half and was awful down the stretch. I don't want to be negative on the Knicks coming off advancing, but we've discussed, Brad, that winning a playoff series against the Pistons, that's not success. This team was built for a championship. I don't think they're at that level. And I think we're getting to Karl-Anthony Towns not reliable enough territory. Not that he doesn't have moments, but you're supposed to be Karl-Anthony Towns. You're not supposed to be a couple games you hit a big 3. You are supposed to help win series. And again, last night, if it weren't for Jalen Brunson, we might be talking about Cat just vanishing when it matters.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you start talking about who's responsible for all this. I just talked to Avery Johnson when I was on air with him a week ago, and he put a lot of it on Thibodeau of not getting the ball to your best players or one of your star players on Towns in the right spots. And Detroit was showing really high on the pick and pop with Brunson and Towns, and taking that away, which opened up Brunson to go one-on-one. And so he sort of in the flow of what basketball demands, he took the opportunity because the bigs were staying out with Towns to not allow him to shoot. And so Brunson went downhill. And then he, a little bit of responsibility on Towns not being assertive enough. And then they came back right in the next game and they gave him the ball in the post, and he got himself going in transition from 3 before Detroit's defense could get set. And it looked like, okay, they adjusted, and then he kind of disappears again. But you never know how much of it is, look, Jalen Brunson is just our best player, and when we're in this tight of a situation, which they were in every game with Detroit, like we're giving the ball to our best player and he's making the play where I don't know that any of us expected Karl-Anthony Towns to be, this
throwing the ball away,
Brunson Towns
throwing the ball away, missing that free throw. I mean, you give him more benefit of the doubt than I do. I think it's tips. I mean, sure, we can talk about how he schemes. Also, these guys look tired. I know this is a tired topic, but he plays these people too many minutes. He wears them out. And the irony is, Thibodeau never saw a minute where he didn't want to play his stars, other than game 4 when he didn't use the timeout to get Jalen Brunson in the game at the end. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing here?
Yeah, that was strange. I mean, he was obviously trying to save that timeout for potentially a last possession situation. But yeah, that was I think if you want to make for some reason, I want to be optimistic about the Knicks. I hear what you're saying.
Really?
And I don't know why. I just feel like this is the kind of team that I think is the best suited to compete with the stretch shooting big that can space the floor, and another big that you can go to for lineup versatility in Mitchell Robinson, who you can play a whole different style of game depending on matchup. You can defend the rim and you can offensive rebound the hell out of the ball, and you have a go-to scorer in Jalen Brunson, who against these playoff defenses, when they start adapting later in a series and they start taking away your schemes and everybody's familiar with the scouting report, this guy can just go get that bucket he put together, forget the game-winning 3, underneath on the baseline last night. He pivots 4 different ways and throws in a reverse. He can just find a way to create cracks of space to score. And then you have all these two-way guys on the wing with Hart and Mikal Bridges, and Bridges had a good game last night. He's off and on, but it seems like they have enough guys who only 1 or 2 of them have to be having a big one night. Anunoby gets hot, one night Towns gets hot. It doesn't always have to be the same guy.
I think you're being overly optimistic. They
probably
shouldn't
am.
have beat the Pistons. The refs
No, I
stole
agree.
one
They
game, and
totally
frankly,
agree.
not
21-0
not just the
run.
refs. Yeah, that's the 21-0 run though, and I guess I should credit the Knicks. That was about a young Detroit team just going, "Oh shit!" I mean,
I agree.
the Pistons were better. The
I
Pistons.
agree.
By the way,
And
Brunson was awesome.
Foul, and there's no way he doesn't make at least 2 of
Right.
those free throws. So
Give me a
win.
break.
That's
a win.
That's a win. Yeah, we don't have to say maybe it would have played out differently. The ref said we missed the call. That's a win. So right there, that reverses it. Detroit goes up 3-2. And
whoever's
the
to blame.
21-0 run was about I agree. The Pistons outplayed them in that series. I agree.
The Pistons just panicked. All right, so whoever's to blame, Cat is unreliable. The team is worn out. Thibodeau looks over his skis, and New York barely beat whatever the sort of final in the aggregate, barely beat a Pistons team that I thought were better. To the eye test, I thought were the better basketball team. And other than one game, the other games were all decided by 8, 9, 10 points in total, whatever it was. The way they just played, they're losing to the Celtics in 5. They're doing what the Magic did.
Yeah.
Okay, before we run out of time here, and I'm just going to be late to this thing I promised my wife I would make, so that's life. Work happens. Clippers, Nuggets, kind of expected, went to a Game 7. Great, fun series. Nice to see James Harden be a little more aggressive. I know it was mostly in the first half, but whatever. Like, they need that help. They need that lift. Do you have a strong lean who wins? Because I don't. This feels classic Game 7. Could go either way.
Super coin flip. Yeah, I still think the Clippers have the better team just because of the depth and the different, but Jokic and Murray is now playing again at a star level. Yeah, there's cases you can make on both sides. The game is in Denver. If you have to lean, if you're totally on the fence, like this is what you play for to get Game 7 at home. I would probably, this is a weird thing to say. I probably think Denver is going to win. And I also think the Clippers are actually the better team. But I would
That's fair.
I actually lean the Nuggets in Game 7.
I think I do too. I took the Clippers at the start. That means nothing. Norman Powell has not played well on the road in this series. I think it's about Jamal Murray. There's a lot of factors. Jamal Murray has a really impressive offensive outing, which he's more than capable of. I like Denver. Jamal Murray doesn't. I don't. They don't have 3 supposed Denver, big 3, and they never did. But Michael Porter Jr. doesn't even play now all the minutes, and so they need a little more offense from Jamal. Last thing here, then we'll take a break and we'll hit Redick real quick and get out of here. Your Warriors have a chance to close out the Rockets tonight. A lot going on. Dylan Brooks is hitting the thumb. Jimmy's playing through the pain. I do think the youth of Houston can still catch up to him, and the road is a different place. Do you have a strong – I think the Warriors win this game, but again, I'm not – those variables make me a little less certain.
Yeah, I don't feel good about this. If I'm saying the Warriors if I'm saying the Warriors are winning tonight, I'm going on pedigree and I'm going on home court. It's not the basketball that I've seen. In fact, I think there's only one team, as the Rockets showed in Game 5. The Warriors are not capable of blowing the Rockets out. The Rockets are capable of blowing the Warriors out. The Warriors, even though they're up in this series, they're the ones playing uphill. Stephen Curry, nobody can create any space against this. It is only the absolute greatness of Stephen Curry in the game that Jimmy Butler went out, and Jimmy Butler comes back and is fantastic in the first game that he comes back, that ultimately those 2 guys and Draymond's green defense and all of that, it's still Şengün had a shot to win it at the end of Game 4. So it's like these teams, if one team was going to blow the other one out, it's the Rockets are actually, they're deeper, they're more athletic, they are not scared. I don't care about their youth one bit. They have that one veteran anchor in Fred VanVleet, who's been great the last 2 games. They scare me because they have a guy, even though their offense isn't consistent, they have multiple guys who on any given night can be the best player on the floor. Jalen Green showed it in Game 2. Şengün showed it in Games 4 and 5. Fred VanVleet has showed it in Games 4 and 5. So against that defense, you really only need 1 or 2 guys to be having a hot shooting night, and you'll get blown out. You'll get blown out. So to me, it has taken even though they're up in this series, the Warriors to me feel like the team that's playing uphill. But they have positioned themselves to be able to close it out at home. If they
are the Warriors.
If they don't,
pressure's on.
Oh.
All right, pressure's on. All right, we're going to very, very quickly close out with a little JJ Redick talk, and then we're out of here. That's next here on Beyond the Arc.
and I won't look back. I won't give up. Yeah, look, I'm invincible. I'm invincible. Look, I'm invincible.
All right, welcome back into the show. One of my favorite things about villain arcs, Brad, is when a villain becomes the very thing he purports to hate and then becomes the bad guy. And JJ Redick has always been not a big fan of Doc Rivers. And the last week or so, it struck me he's becoming very Doc Rivers-like, because Doc Rivers, smartest guy in the room, no one else is to blame. Doc's more charming with the media, but if you see Doc sort of behind the scenes and talk, very similar vibes. My first sort of, oh man, JJ doesn't have the humility. Let me say this. JJ needs to find the humility to be a little more self-reflective. Came before the Lakers got eliminated in the pregame of the final game. Remember, as you know, in game 4, he played 5 guys the entirety of the 24 minutes of the second half. LeBron looked like he ran out of steam. Very reasonable, since that had never happened in the shot clock era, the play-by-play era, to say, hey, man, what were you doing? And JJ did this.
Hey, Coach, back here. Back. As you watch the film, what do you recall about your thought process in the moment? Sticking with the 5 you stuck with in the fourth quarter the other day, and is there an assistant or someone maybe that you'll lean on tonight, maybe to try to get some other guys involved if that opportunity presents itself?
Are you saying that because I'm inexperienced and that was an inexperienced decision that I made? You think I don't talk to my assistants about substitutions every single timeout?
No, I just think there's a lot of coaches lean on their assistants in those situations.
As do I, every single time. That's a weird assumption.
And then, so let me just set this up very quickly. I gotta go, but whatever, I'll be late. So then the other thing I apologize, Gregg Popovich. That was so disrespectful. The other thing Doc Rivers, I would argue, Brad, has done in his career is throw guys under the bus. And sometimes it's very, very out in the open, like Ben Simmons, and sometimes it's very, very, very subtle. He didn't say Luka Doncic here, but again, JJ Redick was giving me Doc Rivers vibes when he clearly, I think, was pointing a finger at Luka in part for this elimination.
I think I'll start with the offseason and the work that's required in an offseason to be in championship shape. And, we have a ways to go as a roster. And certainly there are individuals that were in phenomenal shape. There's certainly other ones that could have been in better shape. That's where my mind goes immediately is we have to get in championship shape.
I don't know your mileage here, but what's that?
This is extraordinary. I mean, all the problems that the Lakers have. He has to play 5 guys the whole game. They don't have a center, and he actually takes it to in public in a press conference when that was all the exit talk of Luka Doncic in Dallas. He actually at the first
unbelievable
brings up the shape that they're in. It's unbelievable the other avenues that he could have gone. And the first thing that he says, the top priority, the first thing on my mind is we got to get in shape. It's too good. It's too good.
Here's the other comp for Doc Rivers that people better be aware of. When Doc Rivers, this is me just going at Doc, but it's all true. When Doc Rivers goes and lands places, he alienates people, and the vibes turn bad, and people want to leave, or they want him to leave. This is a reality. There's no guarantee Luka Doncic is going to sign that extension. I think he will. We all think that he will, that he'll be a Laker forever, probably. But you can do everything in your power to make Luka love being the Laker and love being in LA and feel supported. And to your point, maybe do the opposite of what the Mavericks did. Maybe give him a beer and don't bring up his conditioning until he signs on the dotted line. Maybe JJ will be great. Arrogance is fine. But if you can't have a little bit of self-reflection, if you can't anticipate someone's going to ask you about playing 5 guys 24 minutes, you're the one who's doing something wrong, JJ Redick, not the rest of us. I think it's flashing warning signs.
JJ Redick is smug as they come and always has been.
He is smug.
There's no question about it. But I will say that in that previous situation about will he lean on his assistants? I mean, he was set up to be smug there. What to imply? Nobody.
That's a good question.
No reporter.
That's a good question.
Dude, no reporter.
That's a good question.
Listen, no reporter frames the question of will you ask your assistants what to do? They can ask Redick.
Because every reporter's a coward. Because 95% of the people who cover the NBA, Brad, are cowards who are more worried about impressing their colleagues and NBA Twitter. Oh, give me a break. The guy. Hold on. A, good question. Ask whatever you want. Ask tough questions. B, you are trying to tell me that these assistant coaches of experience go, JJ, what we think you should do is you should do something that's never happened in a non-closeout game, including with your 40-year-old worn-out superstar and play them all. That wasn't an assistant's coach. Then give me a break. And JJ doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who listens to or loves people telling him he's wrong. You think his assistant coaches are?
I'm not arguing.
Come on.
I'm just saying when you talk to a head coach, nobody asks. I defy you to go find me one other instance in any press conference where you just ask the coach. Just say, "Will you do it differently?" To imply that he's.
I think it's reasonable.
Coaches that needs to be sort of like carried by. He needs to be.
He does. What do you want? I thought the reporter did it diplomatically. Like the question is, hey, JJ, what you did was really stupid. Why didn't you lean on your coaches? The guy asked it. I totally disagree.
No way. Just
super reasonable.
Would you do it differently next time? There's a reason you're in the head coach seat. You get the questions. You get the accountability.
I think it's reasonable.
Just say, JJ, will you do it differently? What went into your decision? Don't say,
Nate McMillan.
Ask your parents next time.
Oh, totally disagree. Nate McMillan and Scotty Brooks are there to help him with experience. That's been stated. That was talked about in the introductory press conference. That's not some little secret you can't talk about. Since that's a reality that JJ has acknowledged, and JJ made a crazy rookie mistake that cost his team a game, a reporter can't ask about it because it hurts his feelings?
No, I don't think you need to ask, will you ask your parents next time? I just don't.
They're not his parents. They're his employees who are literally paid to make sure he doesn't make the kind of mistakes he made in game 4.
Listen, there's coaches out there. There are young coaches out there who have the same reliance. Every coach to some degree. Nobody's asking the other coaches, will you ask somebody else what to do next time? It's
because the other coaches don't do what he just did. Look, dude, you mentioned his smugness. You can't be smug and then be put out when someone asks a question that you find to be smug.
And ask Tom Thibodeau why he didn't ask his assistants if he should have called timeout to get Brunson back in the game.
Tom Thibodeau's super. No. Disagree. Ask Tom Thibodeau, bro. When are you going to learn from your own mistakes? That's the difficult question to ask Tom Thibodeau. It's contextual. The mistake of JJ Redick is a lack of experience. I actually think the question gives him the benefit of the doubt. It's, hey, JJ, you're not stupid. You're clearly inexperienced. I think it's actually a compliment in the context of the moment.
I don't think you need to ask the question that
I
way.
love people who want to tell reporters what questions to ask. How many press conferences have you asked a question at? How many press conferences have you?
It's poking.
I mean, no, it's not. You don't know that. You don't know what the guy's writing.
I don't know it. That's my opinion. That's what I heard.
I mean, dude, come on. If the NBA wants these guys to be treated like they're babies, if you want to parent them, then make the coaches available in one-on-ones. It's a lot easier to ask that question in one. It's hard to ask those difficult questions at a press conference because everyone's like, "Oh, how dare you?" I have no idea who the reporter is. I didn't recognize the voice. I think good for that person. Ask the hard question.
I didn't say so. It's just as hard of a question to ask JJ to reflect on his decision. I'm not saying don't ask the question, don't broach the subject, don't make him answer for it. I'm saying the guy's the head coach of the Lakers. It's implied that he's young and he's using other people to help him along and as advisors. That's implied. You don't need to point out.
You and I get to write columns. You get to write your opinion whenever you want. There are many people employed covering the NBA, Brad, who don't have the luxury you have, who don't get to just be like, here's what I think. I'm Bill Ryder. Here's what I think. So I don't know. But if that guy's writing a piece where he can't be opinionated and his editor goes, you got to write about why JJ Redick's lack of experience might have impacted him. His only way to get information, Brad, is to ask the question.
Okay.
It's the only way to do it.
If that's what he was doing. If you go find me that guy actually specifically needed to know the assistant angle then that's fine. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. That's your supposition. I'm just saying, if you're JJ Redick or any of us, you don't get to dictate the questions. I've heard a lot worse. I would rather people ask questions that are too aggressive than the normal, like Tim Reynolds in the AP in Miami, like, hey, Spo, you're so brilliant. Where did you get so smart? Like, I'm over that crap.
Dude,
Ask
I'm not
questions.
suggesting that you should just throw softballs up. I don't think that I wouldn't ask any young CEO or anybody who's in a position of power. I wouldn't ask them, hey, buddy, you just obviously did a stupid thing. Next time, will you ask somebody else what to do? I just wouldn't do that.
I mean, based on the context, I think you should. If someone becomes president who has no military experience and they launch a attack on Iran, I think it's reasonable. Hey, did you talk to the Joint Chiefs of Staff here? I don't think it's unreasonable to ask people who hire individuals to advise them.
I didn't hear this. Did he ask him, did you ask your assistants, or did he assume that he didn't?
I think he asked him, like,
responded to. If his question,
now you're getting into semantics.
No, I'm not. If his question was, I'm curious about your decision making here, is that something you guys came up with collaboratively, or was that a unilateral decision on your part? I'm curious about your involvement. To assume you didn't have the humility to ask for help, will you next time?
You're assuming he didn't have the humility because he doesn't show humility. I've been to 1,000 of these things. You probably have too. And I've heard 400 worse questions. The reason why it's JJ's response that is the issue.
I don't think it was a horrible question. I think that
it's a horrible answer.
A smug.
It's a horrible response.
It was a horrible response. I'm just saying that if you put a guy who's smug and defensive and thinks he's smarter than everybody else, in that sense, those qualities about JJ Redick were set up to come out by that question.
This guy, our job is not to protect these guys from themselves. It's not.
I didn't say it was his job.
You said put him in a situation. He put himself in the situation.
Predictable response. That's all I said. That was a very predictable response.
I'm sure he got what he needed. I liked it. Whoever you are, reporter, I liked it. Are we doing team of the night? Do you want to do team of the night? Or I gotta go. Actually, I gotta go in like 30 seconds. No,
I mean, I guess the Nuggets.
Let's skip it.
The Clippers. That was the team of the night.
They did it. Sure, I'll take the Knicks. It's good stuff. All right, that was fun. That was good. I'm sorry to have to run. I gotta go do a thing. But I hope when we talk next that your Warriors advanced tonight, because I would really like to see them play the Wolves. Fingers crossed. Good luck to your Warriors. It'll be a great game. I will be on CBS Sports HQ before that game, after that game, and apparently before and after every game for the rest of my life. So please check those hits out. And John and I will be back on Monday. I think we're on CBS Sports Network on Monday. Check that out. He is Brad Bodkin. I am Bill Ryder, and we'll see you next time I'll be on the Arc.